And we're back in the studio like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of this, hopefully, happy hump day here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. The newest entry in our ongoing series, simply titled The Great Movies. And this is a film that's now just about 23 years old. It features a multiple Oscar-winning actor, another Oscar-winning actor in a supporting role, and a filmmaker who a few years prior won Best Picture and I think also won Best Director. Filmmaker is Sam Mendes. The lead actor is Tom Hanks. The supporting actor in this film, who also had won an Oscar for lead actor, is Paul Newman. And the movie is 2002's Road to Perdition. Now, the kind of nuance here, because you know I'm all about nuance, right? I like not so much philosophizing, but I like the idea that things are not always either one way or the other. This film is either fantastic, underrated, or it sucks. Then there are movies that are not entirely successful, but you at least see what the filmmaker was going for. And then there are films, such as Road to Perdition, that if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, if you read a bunch of reviews, the critical consensus is that this is a very good movie. This is bordering on great. My argument is this is a great movie. This is a film that was undersold. It was somehow underrated while still getting mostly fantastic reviews. And on the most overhyped movies series, I have American Beauty, and that's a film that I like. It's 3 to 3.5 stars, but I don't love. I believe that Road to Perdition is the best film that Sam Mendes has made up to this point. I far prefer it to American Beauty. I think Road to Perdition is almost perfect in the way that Mendes is able to set the time period, getting a really strong performance out of Tom Hanks, a little bit of a surprising choice to play that role, and one final masterful turn from Paul Newman, his final Oscar nomination for supporting actor in this film, and a really wild fire performance from a rapidly rising future James Bond, Daniel Craig. Now, the interesting thing, I remember reading about this when the film was being promoted before it came out, and there were a lot of people surprised that Tom Hanks agreed to play the lead of Michael Sullivan, because just from the trailers, we understand this is a guy he's a mobster. He works for the Chicago mob in some capacity. He works directly for Sullivan family, that's the Paul Newman character, and he appears to be connected to the Capone mob, that he has something to do with it. So he's not Capone, he's not Frank Nitti, but this is a heavy hitter. And we see that Tom Hanks' Michael Sullivan is not above roughing people up, and if need be, breaking their arms, and if need be even further, putting a bullet in them. And when this film was released, I remember reading a story that indicated Sam Mendes would have cast Tom Hanks in American Beauty in the Lester Burnham, the Kevin Spacey role, which, love him or hate him, Kevin Spacey, phenomenal actor, and he ended up winning the Best Actor for American Beauty. Should have gone to Denzel Washington for The Hurricane. But very few people took issue with Spacey's performance in that movie. But when word came out, I'm not sure if it was Hanks that volunteered it or how this surfaced, but Hanks had indicated he wished he had at least been offered the American Beauty script to have the opportunity to say yes or no. So when people were suggesting, wow, what an unusual choice for Tom Hanks, who kind of a Gary Cooper type, usually plays humble good guys, little James Stewart, and here he's playing a guy who has a moral compass, but he kills a lot of people in this film. And you could say the same about Denzel's character, speaking of Denzel, in Man on Fire. How many people does he kill in that movie? He's got a moral compass too. Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon. Moral compass. Kills a couple of dozen people at least, I think, in that film. So these are kind of dicey conversations to have. But the idea that Tom Hanks probably would have taken the lead role of Lester Burnham, a very gray area kind of a protagonist. You could argue in his own way, he is a way worse human being than Tom Hanks's Michael Sullivan in the world of Road to Perdition. But that's neither here nor there. The setup of this movie it's immaculate. Right away, we see the cinematography, the contrast between light and shadow, a little bit of a film noir ethos going on here. And we understand that Michael Sullivan is kind of the godson of Paul Newman's crime boss, but he's not actually his son. Newman's character kind of adopted him, and he has worked for him, and he and the family, Jennifer Jason Leigh plays the mom, they live quite comfortably. So crime does pay up to a point in the world of this film, and then it doesn't really anymore. But that is what we get. We get a character who is a gray area character, and Tom Hanks carries it off because he has moments of legitimate paternal warmth with his son, Junior. But then there are times where he relates to him unlike any other character in Tom Hanks's filmography. This is a guy who is not going to take any shit from anybody. And whatever fears he might have, his primary function when the movie starts is putting food on the table. However he's got to do it. We got a nice house. I'm going to get done what I need to get done. If I have to get my hands dirty, I'd rather not. But if I have to put a bullet in somebody, if it's the difference between that or my kids or my wife, it's a little bit like heat. If it's between you and some slob whose wife you're going to make a widow, brother, you are going down. He's made peace with the choices that he has made just up to the point in the story when we meet him. We understand this is not really somebody you would ever want to come across in real life. There aren't that many Tom Hanks characters where you can say that with certitude and say, yes, I hope to never meet this guy. You know, wouldn't mind meeting Forrest Gump. He would tell you a story, talk your ear off for a couple hours. No problem. Jim Lovell, love to meet that guy. I'd like to meet the character that he plays in That Thing You Do, the record industry executive. He mostly plays and has played reasonable people. Well, he would argue that Michael Sullivan is a reasonable person as long as you don't fuck with him. As long as you're not in his way of doing his job that will allow him to continue to provide for his family. Another thing the film does so beautifully is set up a relationship between Paul Newman's crime boss and Tom Hanks's two kids. He is like the unofficial uncle. And it would be easy, and you could say historically, it would have been easy for Paul Newman to just show up and read his lines. Because by 2002, his days as a leading man were over. He had a kind of showy role with Kevin Costner in Message in a Bottle. The movie's not really that good, but he gets a few laughs. His character is presented as a figure of fun. Every now and then you get a little homespun wisdom. But in the world of this movie, they set the character up to be that. A kindly, grandfatherly type who legitimately adores these two kids of his kind of right-hand man, Michael Sullivan. But shit goes sideways because Newman's actual son, played by Daniel Craig, is a sociopath, potentially a sociopath and a psychopath. And he engages in activities and he does things that are detrimental to literally every character in the story, and plenty of characters who aren't. He is horrendous. And the reality of life is that there are bonds that are broken because blood is thicker than water. In this movie, at its barest essence, is an exploration of that. Because Paul Newman's character, he can't stand his son. His son is a worthless piece of trash, and he knows it. And he has been struggling with this for decades. He loves Michael Sullivan. But if he has to choose one or the other, it's not really a choice. He has to back his flesh and blood, even if it will end up costing not only Michael Sullivan everything, but also himself. And Newman has these moments of incredible power in the world of this film. And I really wish that he had won supporting actor. I don't remember who was nominated against him that year. I know that Christopher Walken was up for Catch Me If You Can. He could have won that award. You could have nominated Tom Hanks also for Catch Me If You Can while they were at it. But it's a really good performance by Newman. He didn't simply show up and, hey, look, I'm Paul Newman and I'm doing this. He's very focused and he tries his best to give a three-dimensional performance within the confines of what amounts to a gangster movie. It doesn't feel like it's going to be or take the form of a gangster movie, but it is. And there were scenes, Anthony LaPaglia, terrific actor, he shot scenes as Al Capone. And Sam Mendes, when he was preparing the film, and, you know, there's a lot of talk about director's cuts and assembly cuts, but Mendes, when he kind of ran back the footage with Anthony LaPaglia, what he would say is, and I believe he said this on a featurette, something to the effect of, the moments with Capone were really good, but they didn't fit the story that I was trying to tell well enough to include in the film. And James Cameron has talked about this too in certain films where there are scenes that are good scenes, they're very cinematic, but unless they suit the particular story the filmmaker is trying to tell, you hate to, as Faulkner said, to kill your little darlings, but sometimes you just got to let them go. And as much as Sam Mendes, I guarantee you he didn't shoot those scenes just to put them on the cutting room floor. He intended to actually show Al Capone, and not just Stanley Tucci, really good as Frank Nitti. It's not a big role, but the 10 minutes or so of movie that Stanley Tucci is in there, wow. Wow. I mean, he is dialed in, and it is, without ever raising his voice, he's fucking terrifying. What a great performance. This film is made up of great performances. Jude Law as a photographer, a kind of a Banksy-style crime photographer, similar to a character played by Joe Pesci in the movie The Public Eye, 1992, Barbara Hershey. Good movie, not great. But this guy, he takes pictures of the dead often after he has killed them. So he is also a bit of a kindred spirit of the Daniel Craig character, psychopath, sociopath, thief, horrendous in every possible way that someone can be horrendous. But Jude Law is this kind of smiling assassin who likes to take pictures. There's a little bit of a peeping Tom aspect. My guess is that Sam Mendes was a big fan of Michael Powell's 1961 movie Peeping Tom, about essentially a serial killer who likes to film his victims. But the movie surprises us. Yes, there are the trappings of the gangster film. It's a period piece. It has thriller elements. There's some really intense action sequences. But it's a road movie. And we're not expecting it, sorry for spoilers, we're not expecting this kind of story to turn into a road movie. And if the phrase road movie, if it doesn't click, it probably means you're under 35 years of age. It simply means a film where usually more than one character, they need to travel from place to place to place in the world of the story to complete whatever their goals are, their objectives in the world of the story. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a more obvious, direct road movie. As Steve Martin's Neil Page and the late John Candy's Del Griffith have to travel all the way from New York to Chicago with stops in Tulsa and Topeka or wherever the fuck they end up stopping to get to the... But that is a road movie. Road to Perdition, road, like this is not an accident. But in the world of the movie, the title is kind of playing with the idea, where is Michael Sullivan really going? And this is a story, you have an A story and a B story. And this is what I think Tom Hanks responded to in the script, because he talked about the fact that he doesn't ever want to play characters where I can't understand their through line. I don't get their moral center, and if they don't have one, I'm not interested. And he saw it in the world of this film that Michael Sullivan maybe was not a redeemable person, but he could redeem himself by protecting his son. And there are different ways for an actor, but there are different ways to show how much you love your child. And in a world of this film, no spoilers, but an action that Tom Hanks takes to almost literally protect his son from having to do something truly horrific that might impact the rest of his life, that might ruin, he might be traumatized forever. That's his redemption. That is his road to perdition. And we can debate amongst ourselves, is Michael Sullivan, was he beyond a normal kind of redemption? Or does he earn, because there's different kinds of happy endings in movies, right? Just like there's different kinds of upbeat endings in life. This movie, I think, earns its ending. It feels right. And I remember the first time I saw it, I took it out on DVD. Alas, I didn't see it in theaters. Catch Me If You Can, like I said, another big one from 2002 with Tom Hanks. I did see in theaters. Didn't see Gangs of New York in theaters. And I don't know why I missed Road to Perdition. I don't really remember why I didn't see. But then again, Matrix Reloaded, which was a little bit later, a film I probably seen 15 times. I missed that in theaters too. And then I got the DVD and I watched it a whole bunch of times. But this was a film that when I first saw it, I thought that I had seen certainly top 10 crime movies ever, top 5, maybe not quite top 5 gangster movies, but I'd recently talked about Donnie Brasco, which is also a gangster movie, also a period piece, but it's set like, let's say 40 years before Donnie Brasco. Or Donnie Brasco is set late 70s mostly, and Road to Perdition is set, I don't know if it's still Depression era. It might be. I think it actually is Depression era, 1930s Chicago. I think Road to Perdition is as good as Donnie Brasco. And for me, that's high praise because Donnie Brasco is a masterpiece. It is a phenomenal film. Another movie that to me was slightly, just ever so slightly underrated. The Rotten Tomatoes on Donnie Brasco, I think was 87 or 88%. I think Road to Perdition is right in that ballpark. It's somewhere 86 to 90 range. So it's pretty much the same critical consensus. But you can have a critical consensus of people saying this is a really good movie, but it doesn't mean that the film gets as much due as it should for being truly great. Just for example, Joe Dante's 1993 film Matinee, which I also recently talked about on the channel, and specifically John Goodman's extraordinary performance in it. That's a film bombed at the box office. 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than at least 50% of Oscar winners. Critics really liked it, but it was mostly 3 and 3.5 star reviews, not 4 out of 4 reviews. And Road to Perdition, to me, it is a 4-star out of 4 movie, 4.5 out of 5. It is that good. It is that well acted. And there is a scene, this is also not a spoiler, there is a scene in the film where Jude Law's character and Tom Hanks' Michael Sullivan, they meet in a diner. And each guy, Jude Law thinks that he has the drop on Tom Hanks. He doesn't know that Tom Hanks is suspicious and kind of is pretty sure who this guy is all about or what his deal is. And they have a conversation which appears to not be about very much, but each one is sizing up the other. And it appears that violence is imminent. And we know that this movie is not going to end without some kind of showdown, some kind of, in the immortal words of Andrew Dice Clay, mano y mano between these two guys. The way the movie builds to it, though, it does it in a very subtle way. And Michael Sullivan shows that at heart, this is somebody who probably, he wasn't destined to be a criminal. He's definitely not a sociopath. He knows right from wrong. He has made choices that he knows deep within, I'm going to pay some kind of a price, either in this life or in the next one. He doesn't have to verbalize it. We understand it. But this is a guy who knows right from wrong. And there are moments towards the end of the film where he kind of endears himself to the audience, showing that if he can't personally benefit from something, well, these nice people can. And it seems to bring him a sense of comfort and a sense of happiness that he is actually able to do something that does not directly benefit himself or his son in the moment. He's going to do something really nice for somebody that he feels, you know what? They're worthy. They're deserving. And Paul Newman has a moment in this film where it's kind of heartbreaking, where he looks at Tom Hanks and says something to the effect of, "I'm glad it was you." And it's the kind of idea, almost a code of the gladiators, that if I'm going to go, I'm okay that you're the one sending me. It's okay. I'm glad it was you. I know you. I've loved you. I'm sorry. Shit went sideways. Didn't have to, but it did. And here we are in the rain having a gunfight. I'm glad it was you. Now, before I forget, I know that Road to Perdition, it has been on Netflix. It was on Max. I'm not sure. I usually look this up. I apologize. I didn't look up to see if it was free on any streaming services like an MGM Plus or even a Peacock. My guess is you can find it somewhere without having to pay, whether it's Tubi or Pluto or one of those other channels. I don't think it's on Netflix. That I would have remembered. But if you haven't seen it, if you're in the mood for a little, it's not really a mystery. It is a thriller, but it is a gorgeously shot period piece. The costumes are incredible. The lighting is amazing. The cars, the Tommy guns, all of the little details, the details on the outer edges of the frame. Sam Mendes crammed every shot with as much narrative information as he possibly could. And every actor, as I say, from Stanley Tucci on down, and Jennifer Jason Leigh in a bit of a thankless role as the wife, but everybody brings their A game, and they all feel committed to the story that Sam Mendes not only tries to tell, but story that he tells brilliantly. Road to Perdition, released in 2002, directed by Sam Mendes and starring Tom Hanks, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Paul Newman, Daniel Craig, and Stanley Tucci, the newest entry in our continuing series of the great movies. This has been episode 460 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your rainy, hopefully, happy hump day here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then,